Welcome to True Crime Threads. Today, a masseur's betrayal of a wealthy woman unfolds. Maria Lopez, a successful businesswoman living in a luxurious penthouse in the heart of a bustling city, had everything anyone could dream of. She owned multiple properties, drove the best cars, and was often seen at exclusive events with the city's elite. Yet, despite all her wealth and social standing, Maria felt an emptiness that nothing seemed to fill. Her life was consumed by work, and her relationships were shallow. She had few true friends, and her personal life was non-existent. Maria's heart longed for something more, something real, but the pressures of her business left little time for anything else. One day, after an exhausting week of meetings and negotiations, Maria decided to treat herself to a massage at a high-end spa. She had heard great things about the establishment and hoped that a massage could help her unwind from the tension that had built up over the past few months. When she arrived, the soothing ambience of the spa immediately calmed her, and she felt a sense of relaxation she hadn't experienced in ages. The soft music, the subtle scent of lavender, and the gentle lighting were exactly what she needed. Maria was assigned to Carlos Rivera, a new masseur at the spa. He was in his early 30s, with dark hair, deep brown eyes, and a calm demeanor. Carlos had recently moved to the city, hoping for a fresh start. He was humble but carried himself with quiet confidence. His skills as a masseur were unparalleled, and he had quickly built a reputation for his exceptional technique and ability to ease even the most tense muscles. As Carlos began the massage, Maria was taken aback by how different it felt from any massage she'd experienced before. His hands were strong yet gentle, working with precision to loosen the knots in her shoulders and back. There was something about the way he touched her that made her feel both relaxed and strangely energized. For the first time in a long while, she felt a connection, something beyond just physical touch. His hands moved with such care, and she found herself letting go of the stress that had consumed her for so long. After the session, Maria felt rejuvenated. She thanked Carlos and, without thinking much about it, decided to book another appointment for the following week. At first, it seemed like just a routine part of her self-care regimen. But as the weeks went by, Maria found herself returning more often, seeking not only the physical relief but also the emotional respite Carlos seemed to offer. Their interactions became more personal over time. Maria looked forward to each appointment, eager to spend a moment in his calming presence. What began as a simple professional service quickly transformed into something deeper, though neither of them fully acknowledged it at first. Over time, their connection deepened in ways neither Maria nor Carlos could have predicted. What started as a simple massage appointment turned into something more intimate. Maria began to look forward to her sessions with Carlos not just for the physical relief but for the sense of calm and comfort he brought into her life. He had a way of making her feel seen, understood, and valued, feelings she hadn't experienced in a long time. She began to confide in him about her struggles, her loneliness, and the emotional exhaustion that came with running her empire. In turn, Carlos listened attentively, offering words of encouragement and understanding that made her feel like she wasn't just another client to him. One evening, after a particularly long and tiring week, Maria invited Carlos to dinner at her penthouse. It was an unexpected gesture, one she wouldn't typically make, but something about Carlos made her feel at ease, and she found herself wanting to share more of her world with him. Carlos, though surprised, accepted the invitation, sensing that this could be the start of something important. He didn't know it at the time, but he was already beginning to see Maria as more than just a source of income. He admired her beauty, intelligence, and the way she had built her life from nothing. He had never been involved with someone like her before, and the allure of her wealth was undeniable. But there was more to his interest than just financial gain. He had come to appreciate her as a person, and as their relationship began to develop, he found himself drawn to her on a deeper level. That night, as they dined at her sleek, modern apartment, the atmosphere was relaxed and comfortable. The conversation flowed easily, with laughter and lightheartedness filling the air. They talked about their backgrounds. Carlos shared stories of growing up in a small village, while Maria spoke about her rise in the business world. The connection between them seemed effortless, and by the end of the evening, the distance that had once existed between them dissolved entirely. Maria, who had longed for genuine companionship, found herself increasingly enamored with Carlos. The idea of having someone who seemed so attentive and genuine in her life was intoxicating. For Carlos, it was a chance to experience a lifestyle he had only dreamed of, and with each passing day he realized that he wanted more than just the occasional dinner. He began to imagine a future where he could be with Maria, share in her wealth, and, more importantly, secure a place in her heart. It wasn't long before their professional relationship blurred into a full-fledged affair, one neither could fully acknowledge at first. Maria, caught up in the romance of it all, found herself losing sight of the boundaries she had once kept so firm. She trusted Carlos, but she also wondered if he truly cared for her or if he had other, more calculating motives. Still, she couldn't bring herself to question him, as the connection between them deepened with every passing moment. As their relationship progressed, Carlos began to subtly manipulate Maria in ways she couldn't quite see. At first, it was small things, suggestions about where they should vacation, where they should eat, or which friends she should invite to gatherings. Carlos was always the one with the ideas, always the one steering their time together, and Maria, feeling more dependent on him with each passing day, found herself going along with it. What started as casual influence gradually shifted into a more controlling dynamic. He would praise Maria for her decisions, always telling her how impressive she was, reinforcing her dependence on him. His compliments grew more frequent, though they were never over the top. He made her feel special and cherished, and in return, Maria began to trust him more than anyone else in her life. She slowly pulled away from her old friends, who had often been critical of the people she brought into her life. They had warned her about trusting too easily, but Maria dismissed their concerns, convinced that Carlos had her best interests at heart. It wasn't long before he began to push her further. One evening, after a lavish dinner, Carlos suggested she should reconsider some of her business investments. He spoke confidently about the future of the market, about opportunities that seemed too good to pass up. Maria, usually a shrewd businesswoman, found herself agreeing with him, eager to please him and strengthen their bond. At first, the decisions didn't seem to make a huge difference, but as time passed, Maria's financial outlook started to shift. Small losses here and there grew, and her wealth, once carefully protected, began to dwindle. Carlos assured her it was all part of a long-term plan, that the risks would pay off, and Maria, trusting him implicitly, continued to follow his advice. Meanwhile, Carlos kept her isolated from her past, always suggesting that old friends and acquaintances were holding her back or trying to manipulate her. Slowly but surely, Maria's world began to shrink. The people who had once cared for her were now distant figures, and Carlos became her sole confidant. He was there when she needed him, always by her side, and his presence comforted her, though she began to realize that something wasn't right. There were moments when Carlos would vanish for hours, giving vague excuses about work or personal matters. Maria started to wonder what he was really doing during those times. Still, her desire for companionship and the affection he showed her clouded her judgment, and she let the doubts slide. Carlos, however, was already thinking beyond their relationship. His plans had never been about love. He had set his sights on her wealth, and would stop at nothing to secure his future with her. Every decision, every move, was part of a larger strategy to gain access to everything she owned. He knew Maria's vulnerabilities and had learned how to exploit them, all while keeping up the facade of a caring, loving partner. What Maria didn't realize was that Carlos wasn't just after her heart, he was after everything she had built. Maria began to feel uneasy. The changes in Carlos' behavior, once subtle, were now impossible to ignore. He had become distant, often more focused on his phone or lost in his own thoughts during their time together. His warmth and attentiveness had slowly turned into a cold, almost calculating demeanor. Maria, however, was blinded by the affection she still felt for him, unwilling to accept that something might be wrong. She had invested too much into the relationship, and the idea that Carlos might not be who he claimed to be seemed impossible. But the feeling of unease only grew stronger. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Maria decided to surprise Carlos by visiting him at his apartment. She hadn't been there in a while, and something told her that she needed to see him away from the confines of her luxurious penthouse. When she arrived, the apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. There were no signs of Carlos' usual presence, no music, no mess from a late-night meal, just an eerie stillness. Maria pushed aside her growing sense of discomfort and knocked on his door. When he finally opened it, he seemed startled to see her. Carlos quickly recovered, putting on a smile and offering her a drink, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they sat together, she noticed that his phone was always within arm's reach, and he seemed to be checking it constantly, even when they were in the middle of a conversation. Maria was used to Carlos being attentive, but now he was distracted, and it made her question whether he was truly present with her or just going through the motions. That night, she couldn't sleep. The doubt swirling in her mind became too much to ignore. She decided to do something she hadn't done before she went through Carlos' things while he slept. She didn't want to, but something inside her told her she needed to know the truth. Her heart pounded as she rifled through his bag, his drawers, and his desk. That's when she found something that made her blood run cold: documents that suggested Carlos had been involved in a series of financial schemes. He had lied to her about his past, and his connections were far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The shock of the discovery left her shaken. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. All the trust she had placed in him, all the love she had thought they shared, now seemed like part of an elaborate facade. Maria confronted Carlos the next day, demanding answers, but he was quick to deny any wrongdoing. He claimed that the documents were old, that they were part of a previous life he had left behind. But Maria wasn't convinced. The more she dug, the more she uncovered, until it became clear that Carlos had been using her from the beginning. The facade of their relationship crumbled. Maria, devastated by the betrayal, realized that Carlos had never truly loved her. His affections had been a carefully crafted performance, designed to manipulate her into trusting him and letting him into her life. She had fallen for a man who had always been after her wealth, not her heart. But as the truth came to light, Maria found herself caught in a web of lies, unsure of what to do next. Maria's world felt as though it was crumbling around her. The realization that Carlos had been using her for his own gain left her feeling betrayed, isolated, and devastated. The once vibrant and confident businesswoman now found herself questioning everything: her judgment, her choices, and her trust in others. She had been so certain of their connection, so blinded by the attention and affection Carlos had shown her, that she never saw the manipulation happening right before her eyes. But Maria wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She had built her empire from the ground up, and now she was determined to take control of her life once again. The first step was to distance herself from Carlos. She ended their relationship immediately, cutting off all contact and telling him she never wanted to see him again. Carlos, taken aback by her sudden resolve, tried to apologize, promising that he never meant to hurt her. But Maria was resolute. She had seen through his lies and no longer cared for his empty words. However, Maria's problems didn't end with the breakup. As she began to review her finances and investments, the full extent of Carlos' manipulation became clear. The schemes he had been involved in had left her vulnerable, and she realized that he had taken advantage of her trust to divert money and assets into his own hands. It wasn't just a matter of broken trust, it was a matter of real loss. Maria knew she had to act fast to reclaim what was hers. She hired a team of lawyers and private investigators, determined to expose Carlos for what he truly was. The investigation revealed that Carlos had been using his charm and his position to infiltrate the lives of wealthy individuals, with a long history of fraud and manipulation. The more Maria uncovered, the angrier she became. She had been one of many victims, though she would not allow herself to be another statistic. In the end, Carlos was arrested, charged with a range of financial crimes, and his fraudulent schemes were exposed to the public. The court proceedings were lengthy and challenging, but Maria's resolve never wavered. She stood firm, refusing to let him escape justice. As the case drew to a close, Carlos was sentenced to prison for his crimes, and Maria was left to rebuild her life. Though the pain of the betrayal lingered, Maria found strength in the knowledge that she had taken control of her future. She rebuilt her business with a new sense of purpose, and though she would never forget the lessons learned, she emerged stronger and wiser from the experience. The luxury and wealth that once defined her life no longer mattered as much. What mattered now was her independence, her self-respect, and the wisdom she had gained from the most painful chapter of her life.